Oh, there we are.
Okay.
I will get the hang of this by the end of the month. Hello, everybody. Oh dear. Oh dear. I thought I muted it. Sorry, everybody. We're off to a good start. Hi, my name is Margaret Pinard. You are on my channel, which means you are on Booktube. So welcome, welcome, welcome. I am doing a series called Agitation August, and as part of that, I have my lovely friend Leslie on. Hello, Leslie.
Hello.
She's from the channel Books, Gers, and Purrs. So if you want to go sign up and subscribe, definitely go do that. We're going to be talking about agitation in August, which means people coming on the channel are bringing a favorite book or a book that shook them up and made them think about life differently or change their life in some way. It'll be a little different tonight, so we'll inform you about that change as we go. Leslie, how are you doing this evening?
Good. I'm just glad to spend time with you. Things have been crazy, so it just feels nice that I get to chat with a friend about books.
Yes. Same here. I know. We send Voxer messages and memes on Instagram to make each other laugh. And sometimes that is the counter to the agitation. You gotta have some humor. Yeah. So if anyone is curious about Agitation August, elements of the readathon / interview series are down in the description below. I've got a calendar of all the guests that are coming on, a blog post to explain a little bit more about the background, anti-intellectualism, and how we're anti-intellectualizing, and bingo cards in the description. So you can play a game and you'll figure that out also in the description how that will work. So Leslie, we meant to do a buddy read of this book, right?
Yes. That was the intention. Intentions matter.
Yes. The book is called Social Justice for the Sensitive Soul: How to Change the World in Quiet Ways by Dorcas Cheng-Tozun. And how did this come to your radar? Because I think you knew about it before I asked you about it. So is that right?
Yeah. I was spending time with my sister during, like, I don't know, maybe around Thanksgiving or Christmas, about that time. Walked into a bookstore on her side of town, like in Riverside area,
Mm-hmm.
and that book was on display, and it just kind of spoke to me. So I just picked up a copy, and it just began to collect dust on my shelf. But I was very excited to read it just with the title alone.
Yeah, because sometimes books need to cure for several months or years, but I think we had settled like earlier this year, like in spring of this year. So this is pretty quick for me. This is pretty quick, like purchase to read date for sure. And in case, what?
I was like, yeah, same here.
Yeah, I've got years old veterans on the shelves. But the reason I came to see this book, I did see it on the shelf in a local bookstore as well, Bold Coffee and Books, one of the people who are giving a gift card as a bingo prize. But the reason it caught my eye is because Dorcas Cheng-Tozun is someone I know. So 20 years ago, I was in an AmeriCorps program in California where I met some lovely, lovely people who turned out to be like solid lifelong friends, and Dorcas was one of the supervisors in the program. So she was lovely. She was one of two, so we had basically like two trainers, and every Friday we'd see them, and she was great. So when I saw she had a book, I was like, what? That's very cool. So yeah, let's see. I'm gonna follow my outline so I don't forget anything. How about putting this book in the greater context of your engagement with social justice issues? Because I think that's part of why you started on Booktube anyway. So why is reading a book about social justice for the sensitive soul, how does that relate to that bigger context?
Yeah, for me, what actually caught my eye was the kind of like the subheader, like how to change the world in quiet ways. Everyone can see that in the States, maybe things aren't going so well. And so
whatever do you mean? Yeah.
And so as someone that at this moment feels a bit like helpless or doesn't know I just don't know. I just feel like overwhelmed, basically. And not just me, but every person is just one person. And so when there's issues or like civil unrest, things going on, it could just feel so large. And reading that book made me feel like, okay, maybe this is a baby step. Maybe I could figure out some tools from this book, how to navigate. I don't expect to have all the answers, but I need to start somewhere.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. I feel like that was the same sort of feeling that I was having after I rebounded a little bit after the election. So there was the election last year, and then there was the absolute like snowstorm in my brain. It was like, what just happened?
Mhm.
Then there was some depression. And then when I recovered from that, I was like, okay, well, I had a plan before this, and like I need to continue with that plan somehow in a different way, like in a bigger way or in another way or something to accommodate the new world order. So yeah, I feel that small
Yeah.
ways.
Yeah. But also just to kind of like, I think just to narrow down what you're asking me, the books I tend to read on my channel, not like exclusively, but they tend to be around like social injustices.
Mhm.
And so just digging into some of especially like the nonfiction books I picked up, I've just seen authors point out like the patterns of oppression
Mhm.
and colonialism. And so to see someone right now in our current administration just like use those steps so clearly in an amplified way, or it just feels like that because it's in the present moment.
Mhm.
Um, Also, kind of like also maybe want to pick up the book.
Mhm.
It's just like seeing all those patterns. It's like nothing new. It's just 2025. So yeah, again, this book just kind of spoke to me in connection with everything else I've kind of already talked about. But I think I hear so much about like what the issues are, and now it's like that again, that baby step towards, well, what could I do? And I don't know what that is.
Yeah. I think what's just to tease apart a little bit what you're mentioning there in terms of what I'm feeling, I have previously felt it was important to study, like you said, decolonization, imperialism, things that have historically been great powers exercising their power, and how it's just sort of stayed, like the inertia in the system has stuck around and has been continuing to ooze out its harm, and how like we're taking little pieces of that as we go and learning. But what feels like the big switch for me is the authoritarian movements. So yeah, that's separate. Often imperial projects can be authoritarian as well, but I feel like they're two separate conversations just to like sort them out. Um,
Yeah.
and on that note, tomorrow's discussion with Jenna Blum of A Mighty Blaze is going to be about on tyranny. So that is more about the authoritarian side.
Mhm.
We're going to talk more about the decolonization side in a moment. But political change in either of those systems. One of the things that is in this book I thought was cool because I attended a No Kings training. I don't know if you've gotten involved with Indivisible, probably not with all the stuff you have going on, but they've been doing trainings and sort of providing some of the infrastructure online to do the organizing for the No Kings, the hands off, and like political organizing. And one of the trainings I was at about a month ago had someone citing a study that they found political change could be made if 3.5% of the population got involved, like
Mhm.
actively involved. And they said, and you know what that is for the US? 11 million people. And I'm like, we've got 11 million people activated, but not like every day. But I
Yeah.
was like, oh, okay, that just like puts it in a different frame for me. How did you think reading that? And I probably didn't jump out at you like it did at me, but like thinking about that number in America and our context, does that sound easy? Does that sound hard?
Mm. um, it does help to have like the data
Mm.
um, when I'm kind of in the abyss of not having the knowledge.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it feels like a starting point again. So it does help. It also helps to minimize mental health. If you're like
was
starting
annoying.
to, like, yeah, if we're starting to really like, if it's the idea, like the Mr. Rogers idea of like, if it's mentionable, it's manageable.
I
So
don't know that. Tell me more.
he said it at some point on like one of his episodes, but I'll look it up and I'll send it to you. But I always think about that. And yeah, you saying that didn't stick out to me, but I do think it frames the whole idea of if we have the hard data, sometimes that feels a little bit like, even that is a little bit alleviating. I do think that it is like something that everyone could possibly potentially be capable of. But it's I'm going in a little bit in a circle because I'm also thinking about the fact that I'll say in context of myself, we're in a capitalist society, and so time is literally money. And so I have to think about everyone's trying to carve out time.
Yeah.
But we also have this system right now that's trying to put people in a position to also eat at like really trying to make that poverty gap real large.
Yeah.
And
The
so,
inequality gap.
yes,
Yeah.
but I also think that thinking, it's like this capitalist thinking that I need to work on myself, because it's hard to disengage like time without that. So this also speaks to like volunteer work, or like what could I do in terms of like civic duty and activism. And that's not always going to be convenient for everyone. So I guess I'm just thinking about that, like who has a time, when, why, like how. So the number, it's nice that we have those people. And also I think it's just also about galvanizing, and
Good
that
work.
comes down to like community, right?
Yeah.
So it makes me feel like a lot of things, like it's possible, but also um, it's the making it happen type of thing. Again, those baby steps. I hope I answered your question.
Yeah. 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 And I just want to highlight that, situations change and like needs and priorities can switch from one week to another. But I think that the quiet ways that some of the introverts are showing up is on BookTube. Like I think for me, carving out the space to say, hey, planting my flag. This is what I believe, and this is why. And you guys should be activating in your own circles and passing the word on. That's how I'm doing a thing. And like you have these author focuses on some of these awesome authors of color and authors who are doing nonfiction heavy work analyzing how to decolonize. So we're going to talk about that one in a second. You spent a lot of time on that in your, what is it, 3 years so far on BookTube?
Yes.
So do not discount that time because it is in the past. It is time logged in and work done. So feel good about that. Okay. All right, so I've got a couple of points about this book. The main thrust of the sensitive souls part is the thing doing a lot of heavy lifting, I think, is sort of highly sensitive person categorization. So sensitive souls is Dorcas's way of describing highly sensitive person syndrome condition that has been identified. And we talked a little bit about this on Voxer, but I was sort of coming to this as thinking like a lot of mental health diagnoses that are in the same setup as this or in the same general field as this, feel like you can have a very hard diagnosis, but you can also have a very slight diagnosis or like be on a spectrum basically for these sorts of characteristics. And so sometimes it's helpful to have that as a tool, as a knowledge about yourself, but sometimes not. So what would you say about like what you learned about that side of self-care and awareness from the book?
Yeah, I think you you already hit what stuck out to me, which is something that I always have trouble with, and maybe it's just something I'm just gonna have to constantly work on, which is the self-care part. I'm not someone that does well mental health wise when I'm not busy, when I'm not working. I just don't do well. And what this author is saying is to self-reflect and kind of key into when you're having those moments. Like what are your symptoms basically? Mental health, emotionally, and how do you like replenish yourself so that a person can do the work. And that part really stuck out to me because sometimes I don't want to really face the self-care part.
Well, there's a handy astrological reminder to do that. Every time Mercury is in retrograde, they say it's a good time to do all those activities, like reflect and recharge and relax. So if you need me to send you a reminder in your calendar, I'd be happy to do that. It's a full moon Saturday night. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Yeah. What did you think was the best part of the book? I think we came to the same thought about this, the last section of the book. What was the author doing?
I like towards the end of the book, I just like that I was getting like solid examples of people that were actively trying to make a difference, but it didn't seem like such a large feat, I guess you could say, which is how I feel. Sometimes the examples that we get have always been like historical, or I know the author also uses an example, but it's one of those that I feel like it's such a it's like a comparison thing. I guess I shouldn't do. Now I'm realizing it, but like there's a Greta Thunberg of the world, and it just feels like the idea of like what activism looks like versus what it could be are like two different things, and that's like the overwhelming part. So I just liked the examples that she specifically gave to me, but those really didn't come in until like the last third of the book. But that's what really stuck out to me the most.
I think because we've thought about this a lot, and not that we're in social justice careers, and not that we have extensive psychology experience with sensitive, I don't know, treatments, but having thought through like ways to help and stuff like that, I think we're already past like the giving yourself permission. Like we know theoretically it's the practice, it's the putting it into practice. And so that's why I think the last section was most useful to both of us, because it was like, oh, okay, so in this field or that field, you could be this person or that person. And it's kind of like looking at people putting on a play where you're like, you don't need to be the lead actor. Like there's all these other roles that you could do. And so I thought that was useful as well.
Yeah, I want to be the gaffer. I want to be the one holding the mic, the mic boom.
There you go.
I need to be on screen. Let me just do my little part.
Yeah, exactly. So that was good.
Yeah, something else. I hope I don't thwart your the way you're doing this. I think that the author also was speaking to like artistic activism, and that really kind of like stuck out to me. But also something that I think she was getting at, I don't know if she really said it like explicitly, but for some marginalized groups, sometimes, like just existing is like a form of activism in itself, because society is oppressive, right? And we're seeing that happen with like attacks towards like the transgender community, for instance. And so for someone to, even just an act of like loving oneself for someone that's going through a world that's or maybe feel like the world's against them, unfortunately that's like the position that they're in. And so there's no real like off switch for certain groups as far as activism. And so that's definitely something that picks at my mind.
Yeah, in all the different ways that I know I have privilege, I realize like I don't have to turn off that, awareness. I don't have to turn off that awareness, and then I can see, okay, these are the ones that I do like constantly am aware of. So yeah, it's a good point. We had a question. I have a question. If people are in the comments like mad, there's a poll question that I pinned at the top in case anyone wants to answer. It's asking, do you both think this book has helped you? Things you'll be able to apply in the future? We just answered that. So I'm actually going to use this transition to go into our second book because, like I said, we thought this would be one of these, like this book that shook us up, but it didn't really fit that prompt. And so we're going to talk about a book that Leslie really wanted to choose, but we'd already had this one. And so I didn't get to read Decolonizing the Mind by Ngũgĩ.
Where is it?
But
Ngũgĩ.
Yeah. So one of the cool things is that in that last section of Dorcas's book, she talks about art can be activism. And that is something that Thiong'o actually says because he's a playwright. He was a playwright. And so that's like art, fine arts, right? Can you give us a little bit of context of who he was, Kenya, time frame, etc.?
Yeah, so he was born in 1938. He is Kenyan, and he came out of like right when like the end of like World War II, and so it was right between the Mau Mau and British war that was going on between them. He's also the son. His father had 4 wives and like 28 kids amongst them all, working in like farmland. And so he just grew up with an oral tradition, and he would speak in Gikuyu, which is a big topic. Like his first language is really important to him because at some point, as a writer, he decided that he was no longer going to write his work first in English, because he does translate for himself, but that he would first write in Gikuyu because there's a larger conversation around like the African as a continent and how the colonial like language of English has come in, and so he wants to just reframe the fact that African literature is typically written in English now. And for him, he thinks that, well, if it's written in English, it's not really African literature, it's African Euro literature, because when a person's reading it, who's the audience? And also, how does culture carry if you're using a different language of someone else's culture to tell it? And so for him, true African literature would be like within its language of origin. So for him, it would be Gikuyu because he's Kenyan. And so that's something that's really important to him. That's the stories that he tells. And he knows that because of the way that he writes and the language that he writes, that then shifts who the audience, who it's for, right? Which is for his own people from his community. So that's permeates all his work, is talking about language, and its impression. And so I think he knows like several other languages, but he just does write in Gikuyu.
Yeah. So we're talking about Decolonizing the Mind by Kenyan playwright and intellectual Ngũgĩ wa Thiong'o. And I think an important part when we're talking about decolonizing spaces so they are friendly and safe for all is asking, who does this policy serve? So I think we're used to that in politics, the political realm. And so for art and like his bailiwick, his specialty, what you were just mentioning is, who is this work's audience? Who is it directed toward? And that's a really interesting question because, again, as English speakers, we have the luxury of thinking and speaking and writing in a language that we assume most people can speak, that has the biggest market, that has the biggest other people who can understand. And I suppose if we had a different experience, we would be a lot more troubled. It would be a lot more of an involved decision. So for Thiong'o, I think what you're saying is that originally he opted for writing in English, the colonizers' language, because that was the intellectual class, that was the expected thing to do if you're going to be in the fine arts. But then when you are trying to get a message across and you're thinking, well, who is this message important for? Maybe it's for the people who speak your own language rather than the colonizers. And so it's more important to speak it in that register. And it does change meanings. So you asked me a question tonight before we got on, which was that oftentimes when you write in one language or another, there's a untranslatable element. And that can be a word or a phrase, but there's also like a whole cultural element. So like I was thinking about this beforehand, and what did I say in my notes? I said, so you would be referencing things people wouldn't know, like you could translate it, Google Translate it, and it could say, um, uh, a good Hastings try, for example. That's a non-existent thing as far as I know. But you would be confused if you were an American and you didn't have the British English and know that the Battle of Hastings was like an English historical event and it was like a huge thing in their history. So there's a historical experience that you can't make reference to because you don't know the culture. There's values that are embedded. So you could not understand an interaction, just like if you were in real life, the conversation where someone gives a look and like there's a reaction and someone leaves and you're like, what happened? Like there's a whole thing that because the values are different, the reactions are different, and you're not going to understand the art. So yeah. Did anything else on that specific topic come up? I know it was a while ago that you read it, but you like.
Yeah, I think he was just talking about. It's so funny. I also was re-listening to it today.
Yeah.
But I think what came across to me also is that choice in itself for him is I would say is like a form of activism, and that's also because when he was a child growing up, he spoke Gikuyu, but then when he went in school, it was already like he was having this oppressive experience of being him and the other kids being forced to speak English.
Right.
And so we're really gaining an understanding that destroying it's an active choice to destroy someone's language, like not just erase, but that's what it feels like it's so destructive. And so for an oppressive group that wants to have the leg up, him doing this is someone speaking their own language is basically dangerous. And that's very it's like a wild, terrible thought that he also mentioned someone else. I don't have their name right now, but there's someone else like that came before him that actually was like in prison for like 10 years because they wrote in Gikuyu. And so that's what happened to them. And also for the author, he wrote a play that eventually turned into a book because he writes so much. But he was also spent like a year, I believe, in prison, and that was like without trial, and it all had to do with because he was putting on a theatrical play, and so since he wasn't doing it in English, that required a couple of things. He's thinking about his audience. He's thinking about who's being hired for the play, right? And they're all going to speak. It wasn't just Kikuyu, but it's like local people speaking their languages, and his government found that dangerous enough to imprison him. Yeah. All for a play. And it just seems, for us, it seems like a wild, crazy thought, but it's very much unfortunately true for so many.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you're like, that seems like such a strange thing to harp on, but that indicates to you that that's where they feel weak. That's where the imperial project feels weak. If you allow for diversity of language, if you allow for diversity of experience and communication among those peoples, then you are, losing your edge of oppression. Exactly.
Yeah, and it also spoke to something he also talks about is and it also kind of reminds me of other authors I've read, but like how should I say, like indigenous authors as well. where there was the land and the space, and then there's this colonial construct that comes in, and now the space is no longer, it just exists. It's now, I would say, capitalized, right? So I live in an apartment and I pay money for this little spot to exist. And there are spaces that once existed, but now they're oppressive because they're prisons. So now you have a space, and the function is to hold people captive and use them for like free labor, right? And him creating a theater that is also like a form of activism in itself, right? Because he's getting a space that's capitalized or oppressed, and he's doing something that's not within that construct, basically. And so that's another layer of like why he's doing that is considered radical, and also kind of how we, yes, or just like artistic activism, which we just learned from the other book, right?
Yeah.
Which I thought was very interesting.
It's kind of like, I mean, can you compare it to the South Park season that's just come out?
I haven't seen it, but everybody's talking about it. But yeah, that's, you know what? They're so wild.
Yeah. So I saw a podcast about it today, about the second episode that came out, and they were explaining, because I didn't get any of it because I'm not a South Park person, but they were like, do they have really good lawyers? They're like, how are they able to do all this? And they said, well, it's all coming under the satire umbrella. So if it's satire, you can do it, apparently. So it's just like, wow, okay. Well, I hope that institution and norm holds up for them, because all of the other ones are sort of like, you know, falling to smithereens. So anyway, yeah. So art as commentary and political subversion. We like it.
Yeah.
You asked me for a French word that might be untranslatable, and I, of course, couldn't think of them. So I started Googling, like, what are the internet's favorite words, right? And I realized one of them on the list was one I had mentioned on the channel recently, and so I just thought I'd resurrect that one. So it's debating. Debates are a thing in high school, but I didn't grow up wanting to ever debate anyone. I hate confrontation. And I think that in France, debate is a much more like healthy social thing to do. And so learning French, there's a funny phrase that's called l'esprit de l'escalier, which is the feeling of knowing the exact riposte, the exact comeback that would put your opponent in their place too late. And so it's like after you left the debate and you've come and your conversation is over, but you're going up the stairs to bed and you're like, that was it. And it's like a little bit of regret, a little bit of like success, but you know, bittersweet. So
that is so funny. That's definitely something I experience often. And I would like a word for it.
There you go. The spirit of the staircase is how it translates, but that doesn't really mean anything unless you know like the context. So
yeah. I also wanted to ask, could I ask the second question? Is that okay?
Yeah, and then we'll catch up on chat. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was gonna ask, is there a certain word you've chosen for any of the books that you've written that's you felt like didn't translate well to English? So you thought, oh, I'm gonna use this particular word because it represents what and why.
So I didn't go through my books for this one because I didn't have enough time beforehand. But one that comes to mind is one that was really hard for me to figure out. So I am not as far along in Gaelic, which I put in the books, as I am in French. And so like it's much harder for me to sort of get into that different style of knowing, right? But one of the words that I learned when I was on Uist, I think, or Benbecula, one of the islands in the Outer Hebrides. There was a little museum and something, and it had Dualchas, Dualchas, and it's not spelled how it sounds because that's Gaelic. But I looked it up, and it was like this weird, like 3-paragraph definition, but it's like cultural heritage and treasure is kind of the feeling that I got after it. And so if I don't know that I put that into any of the books, but I definitely had that sort of longing to describe that with my books that are set in Scotland. So yeah, I do like some cultural heritage, me. So yeah.
Yeah.
And I did want to point out, since we are talking about decolonizing, I did have a very recent conversation with author Susan Palumbo for the Truth and Reconciliation on Climate. She's an author who writes LGBTQ sci-fi and fantasy and goth punk, like really fun stuff. She's got the novella out that I read and talked to her about, but it's very close to an American reality. So it's basically like that space and exercising like how we would go about things and how they would go down. So not necessarily happy ever after, just telling you. Let's see. Mad says, I wonder why Fanon's book, The Wretched of the Earth, was titled that way. Oh, so translation. And we don't know if this is the author's intent or not, but the original title says Damnus. So is Franz Fanon German? Is it translated from German, France, or is it French? I don't know.
He knows French, but he's also Algerian. But he knows
okay.
as
so the
well.
language is coming from
He's coming from French.
Okay, so it must be damné without an accent then, meaning damned. I think it puts a different perspective rather than wretched. Yeah. Because damned of the earth, I would assume damned for a crime, like a Dante situation, whereas wretched, I think, through no fault of their own. That's a big difference.
Yeah, damn seems more permanent also.
Yeah. Hi, Diane. Late but trying. We're glad you're here. Matt says, just one small example of how translation can change meaning, if even slightly. Yeah. This is 6 minutes ago, the empty space. I think she's talking about the person or the empty space.
Yeah, then versus
not living there anymore. It's not supporting people. Yeah. Hi, Elaine. Beautiful. Hey. Two amazing people on my screen. Yeah. Are you pro him? What does that mean? What does that mean? This is the same time as we were talking about South Park. I just watched South Park. That's why I was late. Oh my gosh. His book is nothing but insults. Whose book? Whose book is nothing but insults? It'll take a lot for me to forgive the author, but I'll finish his book. Who is this? Who are we talking about? Bourgeoisie is all over that book. Maybe we're talking about Frantz Fanon, but I thought he was more like a radical, but I haven't read his work yet. So interesting.
Yeah, I'm sure they'll tell us.
Interesting. Okay. Let's see. Oh, I said my word that you requested, so now it's your chance to say, what's your special word for people to locate on their bingo cards?
Oh, yeah. I don't even know how to say it. Ignominious. Minious. If I say it, then I can.
I think it's ignominious. Or
there you go.
The noun is ignominy, like infamy. Like,
yes.
That's a good word.
Yes.
Yeah.
Infamy.
Came across that one last year.
I came across it in a book, and I can't remember which book it was, and you just asked me recently.
It's weeks ago. It's okay. All right. So another important part of decolonizing spaces is questioning our defaults or assumptions, because often that is the oppressor's preference. So, and I have a See Eloise's talk next week for this. So I revisited We Should All Be Feminists, because that's the book that Eloise has chosen by Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie. So I had to refresh myself on that one. And this covers the same point about defaults and assumptions and questioning the premise. So where do we feel strongly this needs to be done? Either in American policy or in the social justice sphere? Just like when you hear about questioning assumptions, where does your mind immediately go? It's like important.
Oh gosh, that's such a large question.
Financing, education, local budgets, zoning ordinances, tax laws, infrastructure investments, transportation, healthcare systems. I had a list. So choose any of the above or anything else.
Yeah. I think that there is Wait a minute, ask the question again. Hold on, sorry. Can you ask that one more time?
An important part of decolonizing space is questioning defaults or assumptions. So where do we feel strongly this needs to be done most urgently?
That the conflation of what someone's morality is mixed up or versus policy and someone else's morality. Like, for instance, the abortion conversation. Someone could decide for themselves that they will never do something to their body medically, but imposing that on someone else, like absolute as an absolute, and placing it into policy just because what you want to sleep at night for your moral purity is like
it's wild. It's wild is what it is.
Yeah. And we're I mean, on top of that, to kind of like get more on top of it, I don't even mean it like side by side, but it kind of intermingles anyways. There's intersectionality between that religious beliefs and government should be like separate, and that is now intermingling, and that desperately needs to be course corrected, because people could believe whatever they want. That's fine, great, but it's now permeating government.
Yeah.
And we're going backwards. So I don't know if that's big enough, but that's my concern right now.
Yeah. I just did that thing where I start a whole bunch of books at once, so I can't remember where I just read. I think it's a book about trust, but I was just reading about how how morality is separate from why you would trust someone. Like, it's actually not the reason. Like, if we think that's the reason, it's not actually based on that. It's some deeper intuitive thing. But yeah. It's like, if we have things we agree on because we're going to govern each other, we need to take a step back and question that assumption, because I don't think we're where we were 100 years ago to be making the same rules. So yeah, I don't know. I'm kind of a rabble-rouser, because when I think that our entire legal system is based on precedents, and I'm like, how do we ever advance if we're only going back? Like, can we erase? Isn't there any way to like erase instead of cross out?
Yeah.
Ugh, frustrating.
What else do we say?
Great answer. Let's see. Questioning defaults and assumptions. Question the premise. I want just testing to see whether there's anything else I wanted to say.
Because also, if I have a certain a certain way that I live by, who am I to say that I'm like the moral authority to everyone else? Because that's also, people have different experiences, regionally, culturally. There's just so many different like nuances to everyone's existence. Yeah. And once we start like forcing people in masses, that's just like an oppressive tactic.
Yeah. It's oppressive conformation, which is why a lot of people left their old countries to come here and be settlers. So I don't understand why we can't make allowances for that. Like, we can't understand. Why are we repeating the same violence that was visited upon our ancestors? Like, what are we doing? Right. Also, in your video, you talked about psychological violence of colonization. And so thinking about that in all those different areas that we were just like listing off, I'm wondering, like, we're talking about violence. There's obviously physical violence. There's obviously political violence. Is there a hierarchy of violence? I feel like when we talk about pain and grief, we say don't compare. But obviously we have a pain scale. Obviously we do compare. What about violence? Is it a matter of triage? Is it a matter of things we can do first? How do you perceive the whole shit show of that? Like, how do we address, not to put the whole like question.
But another layer to that is also, so I'm making it, I'm adding to it,
Burger.
is psychological violence, right? So
Yeah.
there's war, and then like, so for an author like for Thiong'o, coming out of war, and then there's like oppression in the classroom, but there's also this like psychological violence, right? Of let's say how do you control these kids? So there's like these authority figures. There's a place that people should feel safe, and instead there's like, yes, physical violence, but there's like psychological violence taking place, to manipulate and mold these kids into who they want them to become, right? And like that example that he's giving from his experience reminds me, for us in the States, what was done to the indigenous people here, right? Um, uh, what was it called? I know you're gonna know. The schools that
The
indigenous,
yes,
yes, the schools that they were, and you know, it was just horrific things happened. Kids went missing, and it's just like it's throughout the Americas, right? Canada, here, Mexico, and so there's just places that kids were thought to be safe, but it was like quite the opposite. So I would not know. I don't really think there's like necessarily a hierarchy of violence. It's more like a spectrum. There's a spectrum of violence.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm gonna call it a prism just for visualization purposes.
Yes.
Yeah. So, oh boy. Yeah. So when I think of the worst type of violence to me would be like eradicating a culture, right? So the hollowing out. So what they did with a lot of indigenous cultures was say, you have to send the kids or we're gonna kick you off and kill you or fine you or whatever out of existence. So they send the kids to these reserve schools or reservation schools, and the violence is enacted on them. They're not allowed to speak their language. They're not allowed to go through their cultural rites. They feel forever divorced from their own traditions. So taking away the children is a big thing. Also outlawing and making illegal the practice of the religion and the, say, speaking of the speech so that it's forgotten. It's kind of that is what is making it most hard to bring back, right? Is that you don't have the old storytellers, you don't have the people who remember why we did this or who that person was that started this tradition or whatever it is. And how do you get that back? You have to make your myths again. You have to put your roots back down. And that's got to be really, really hard. So I think, there's not a hierarchy. When I think of psychological violence, I think of it as like I think of 1984, which I just had to read because of Ben coming on the channel. And in that one, there's like TVs in everyone's room that watches you, that you don't know if they're watching you, but they could be, like your freaking Alexas in your houses, everybody. And recording everything, and even like the slightest twitch or facial gesture or, stunted movement, like it's recorded and they're analyzing it to try to see if your brain is only processing what they want you to process. So the entire internal dialogue of the main character is like, can't do this. I have to think this. I have to make them think this. And it's like psychological terror because he's only in his head and he's trying to not go insane. And you really feel it reading along. And yeah, so that's terrible too.
Yeah.
But it's individual level, and so it's not the risk of the whole culture going under. So
Yeah.
I don't know. It's all hard.
Yeah. Yeah. What can we do?
Put new roots down, like unearth your own stories, make them give you back your spiritual vestments and your important sacred documents and, belts and things that will tell stories of how your people celebrated before.
Yeah. And
there's
just go ahead, Lee. Go ahead.
no, it's okay. That's it.
I was going to say that on top of that, like specific to here, then there's that added layer of capitalism. So not only has a people experience like violence in so many different iterations, but again they're losing their language or culture, and now we have like university institutions that are now selling, that's what's really going on, selling someone back their culture, right? So now indigenous people that had things for free because it was their own experiences then have to go to school
to
to learn something that belonged to them in the first place. You know what I mean? And it's just like now having this other institution filter and tell me what my culture should be.
Yeah.
And it's just all crazy wrong.
Yeah, I'm here to be the expert. Well, I have the degree. Well,
yeah. Well, how did you get that? You sent anthropologists and stole it from us, and now you're selling it, but only they can be validated. But the fact that certain people already have the knowledge is considered like not enough.
Right.
You know.
So what do you do? Oh, what is this? Sorry, go away. My reload site. Reload. Just go away. Someone else is refreshing another page. So what do you do when something is being gatekept that's your own culture?
I don't know.
You create another system outside that system so that you value that, right? That's my answer anyway, because this is my solution to the climate crisis is like, this economy is going off a cliff. I am jumping off this train. I am not staying on this train. I am building another train next to me. Next to us, jump onto. It's a tiny little dinky train. It goes like 2 miles an hour now, but that's what I'm putting my hope in. Yeah.
It is galvanizing in community. Yeah. Which is what you're doing. That's so true. Yeah.
Yeah. And then when your little train gets to be a little bit more popular and more robust and have more resources of like, here's how it is, here's this rite, here's this ritual, here's this glorious tale of this hero. And then you have those anthropologists sniffing around again going, wait, is this new? Is this dated? Do you have things to back this up? And you go, you know what? We don't need you here. You're uninvited. To quote Alana.
Yeah.
That would be a good day.
Yeah.
That would be a good day. Oh, Diane does not like this Thiong'o book.
Oh, okay. That's okay. You don't have to. It's fine. But thanks for reading it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Says there's lots of insults. Yeah, and shit show is right. Yeah. What we have right now. Yeah. Oh boy. Okay, so audience questions about social justice for the sensitive soul or decolonizing the mind and how a couple of us Americans are thinking about this in terms of social justice. Any questions from the audience? If not, you about to read a thon.
Yeah. Could I add on to something?
Yeah.
I was talking about earlier, and I'm a scatterbrain. I was also thinking about how he mentions that, well, for instance, let's say, okay, so he's a writer and he's writing and he's in Kenya. And if he writes in English, again, the conversation about who's the audience for, but also because he writes in Gikuyu, that means we have to think about who has access to the books. Yeah. And so that was, I don't remember if he mentioned it in this book or something else that I read, like a preface for, but that opened up a need for access because then people wanted to read his books from his communities. And so there's a certain areas where that was not going on. So that means that people are getting the hands on books that they didn't really have access to. They're getting a chance to read books they didn't have access to. And I also think about how that must, so my thought on it is how that affects local economy, right? Versus where these books may have been going before. And so I was thinking about how that affects, I guess I was thinking about local economy too, and also helping one's own community in that aspect as well. like as a positive consequence.
Like in Kenya?
Yeah.
Yeah. Stimulating the local economy by like bringing up engagement and interest in the local topic.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the like framing concepts that I use with decolonization for myself is the whole center versus periphery. So when you think about the British Empire, London was the center of the world, basically. Like they were the best. And everything came through London or Liverpool or Glasgow or whatever it was, and was like centrally managed. And so part of that culturally is feeling like someone is governing you from far, far away. They don't care two shits about you, but you're on the periphery and you're no longer your own world. Now you're like a backwater of someone else. And so that makes you feel unimportant, ignored, and unrepresented. And so any small step of saying, no, we're taking back our local bookmaking workshop, or we're taking back our local storytelling workshops, and this is going to be how we spend Saturday mornings now. You know, any small step that is reclaiming the center, I think, is really powerful and destabilizing for the enterprise, the imperial enterprise.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. Matt says, did either book point you to other authors or activists you now wish to read that weren't on your radar before? That's a good question. I mean, I've mentioned a whole bunch of other books already that are going to be discussed for Agitation August. I've got a graph going, actually, of all the books that are going to be highlighted this month, and I'm drawing lines between, like a red yarn diagram, because they're all connecting in my head. So I wanted to document that. So let me see if I wrote down any notes of other folks. So Indivisible, Jenny Odell. So if you don't know, Jenny Odell is a writer of nonfiction. She's a performance artist and professor. She wrote a book called How to Do Nothing. And I'm doing a slow read along of that book. I'm rereading it with Grace from Books and Cooks. And it's great because How to Do Nothing is about stealing back your attention from the people who are trying to mine it. And so it's about like rethinking, slow thinking, doing what you actually want rather than being a zombie in life. And she talks a lot about tech. And there was a comment in here about tech imbalance. And so I thought, ooh, this is like How to Do Nothing's da-da-da-da. So what about you? Anything else pop up that you're linking besides Front's Fun On?
Actually, the only reason why I think I even knew about Fanon was because of Thiong'o, because I think he like early on mentions the author, and I had never heard of him before. So that's why I ended up reading his, like, one of his books, which is Wretched of the Earth. I want to read his other books, but he had mentioned like kind of early on that he was just thinking about because early on he mentions like how he had been away for a year, and he was thinking to himself, I wonder if any of my students have read Wretched of the Earth. And so that was on his mind. And I thought, well, I've never even heard of this author, this person, this book. And so he, by reading this author, he encouraged me to read that author. There are a couple of other authors that he mentions that I haven't read. And I definitely want to read, if I could find the translation of the book from the author that was imprisoned for 10 years. Because I just find it interesting, like when a book is considered dangerous just for someone writing their own language, you know? So that's definitely something I want to check out. But I don't have his name right off the top of my head right now.
Yeah. I'm not finding it. It's just him when I look up that query. So yeah. That prompted a question that I was going to ask you, and then I just forgot it.
Yeah. Well, there's also an author that I'm already aware of, and I think I have like a couple of their books on my shelf I haven't gone to yet. That is Chinua Achebe.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, he's like reviewed
high school for me.
Yeah.
Did you read Things Fall Apart? No?
I read some of it for like years ago for like a college class, and I have to go back and read it again because I think I kind of like skimmed through. I was just trying to get through the class. But I want to go back and read again. I have it on my shelf.
Oh, okay. There you go. The question that I was going to ask you related to Frantz Fanon. So he's French. So he's French speaking, but Algerian. And I haven't read him yet, obviously, since I didn't know what languages he was. But I've heard of him. Not only Wretched of the Earth, but also Black Skin, White Masks, I think is the title. That's, I think, one of the first titles that I heard. So that's on my list of social justice books and history of different movements to read. But here's the thing that intimidates me, and let me know if you have the same feeling of like reading someone like Thiong'o, that book, which Diana's very surprised that you enjoyed. So I know, like I've read some French books, some like 17th century plays, and they would mean very little to me if I wasn't in a class with someone who had studied these with PhD going over like, this is what this means, and this is why this is funny, and otherwise it would not be anything remotely enjoyable. So when I think about reading something like this, I'm like, how much am I going to miss? Like, I'm reading it in translation. I'm reading it like 60 years removed. There's no footnotes to help me along. There's no professor. Like I know I'm missing so much. How do you deal with that? Is it just like Wikipedia on the side as you're reading, or just kind of go with the flow?
It depends. Like I kind of feel like there's definitely hands 100%. There's gonna be stuff that's gonna go over my head. Especially, I will say, Lynn, Mad World knows this. When I read The Wretch of the Earth, I just felt like when I was talking about it, I'm like, there's this stuff I'm not talking about, and it's because I feel like I just don't know enough for the context. So there's plenty of that book that went over my head, but I felt like I'm at a place where I'm okay with it because, again, it's all about that baby step of me picking up something and acknowledging, yeah, there's stuff that I'm gonna miss, but I'm trying. I'm gonna get something because I'm picking a book and I'm reading it. And as far as like creating a bridge to like context, I don't always do this, and I would like to do it more. Sometimes I'll watch documentaries, or if there's movies about a certain time in history that the author is referring to. Sometimes I'll do that. I'll watch like I'll watch those to help me like connect or put it in context, because honestly, circling back to your work, that's actually you oh my brain is done.
Was there a movie that was the same time period?
No, I meant like your trilogy helped me put something into context that I was having a hard time getting at, which is, I think what I wanted was a family saga. It didn't have to be, but that's just what scratched the itch for me, because I was reading nonfiction and about specific events that happened, let's say like to like my family, my grandparents, but I was having such a hard time finding like on the ground encounters. Like I was trying to understand that whole part of it. Like I'm glad I read books about the big moving parts that, again, the patterns of how certain things happened. But I was having such a hard time. There's just something I was trying to get at, and I couldn't figure it out until I read your books. And then I felt like this is it's an on the ground experience of a family, and seeing that in action and them trying to survive, like helped me understand something that my grandparents honestly didn't feel comfortable talking about. So even though it's like a different country, different cultural experiences, what was happening to them was the same patterns. And I was just like trying to connect the dots. And I forgot where I was going with that, but yes. So sometimes I also, to piggyback off of that, sometimes, I'm going to pick up a book and it might be from like a different culture, and I might not like, again, always understand it, but it's also, even that itself is creating a bridge. I'm kind of going in a big circle here. Sometimes reading stuff is kind of like creating a bridge to understand something that might be going on with either myself or maybe not. Maybe I'm just trying to understand something else that's going on and I just can't wrap my head around. And so sometimes picking up a book and it feels like so out of depth for me, still provides like that little puzzle piece. I might not have all of it. I might not have understood where all the pieces go, but it's something, you know?
Yeah. So, okay. So there's a piece that's wanting to go off with the Remnants trilogy and a piece that's wanting to stick with the Algerian history. So I'll do both. Don't let me forget which ones I was going to do. So there was a Netflix special. I think it was just like 1 season long. So it was like a mini series, but it was about this detective that's from early 20th century, but they resurrect him and pretend he's still around after the Second World War or something. And he's played by an American. And they stick him in the south of France, and it's this really fun, crazy detective shoot 'em up kind of thing. But what they did was they put it right as the Algerian War of Independence was happening, and it was unrolling the plot as they were letting us know what political motives were there and like why someone would have done something. And then I had to go to Wikipedia to like check, wait, when did this happen? What was this battle? Like why? And so I increased my knowledge of this struggle for independence because of this Netflix miniseries that was about a detective. And I'm sure someone will know which one I'm talking about, maybe. But on the other side about the Scottish history, I know what you mean because I have another friend who actually had Scottish forebears, and she said that when she read it, she could see it like it was her own family because they came from that region and it was around that time and it was, persecution, and she could just imagine all these things happening. And it was like someone was telling her a little bit about her own history and helping her empathize with people she wouldn't have known. And I was like, that's so cool. That's so cool. That's what I wanted to pass on is like that empathy with our preceding generations. So that makes me very happy.
Yeah. You did it. You did the thing.
Yeah. All right. So it says Wole Soyinka is another Nigerian author of decolonization well worth reading. Okay.
Let's write it down.
Soyinka. Books. Poems. Ooh, poems also came up as a possibility. Akinwande Oluwole Babatunde Soyinka. Wow, that's a lot of names. Best known as a playwright and poet. 3 novels, 10 collections of short stories. Excellent. I think he's still living too. Yeah, 1934. Woo! Okay, awesome. Thank you for the recommendation. That's excellent. We love that. Yes, Margaret has the rare skill to weave the political in a way that doesn't hit you over the head, but is intrinsic and so interesting. Well, thank you. Thank you. Which books cause the confusion? Now I want to read them. I wasn't talking about books that cause confusion. In my case, it was a detective series that was on Netflix. And it was very violent. And maybe you guys don't watch the same things.
Yeah. But also that really speaks to like the importance of fiction to like put history or like not just history but events that feel like it's not really possible to wrap one's head around or put context to it. And that's the beauty of like also art too, right?
Yeah, you get aligned to a feeling instead of dry dates and memorizing like who won which battle, which I don't think is very helpful.
Yeah.
Oh, my books. I think I still have a link to the trilogy down below. If not, you can go to, I think it's MP Books, my bit.ly/MP Books. But yeah, it should be on my channel page at least. It's the Remnants trilogy, so that starts with Keening, and then it goes to the Grasping Root, and then it ends with Stormwrack and Spindrift. And so we've got Scotland and Canada basically as settings for a different family sagas, threads, intertwinings. So And you can go over and watch the reviews on Leslie's channel, and she did a great job interviewing me. So yeah, she's got some good videos to watch if you are curious. Any other audience questions? I'm going to ask Leslie while we're waiting for any last audience questions. You have a readathon going on. It's very involved. You put a lot of work into it. It's 2 years long. Why did you bring that together as your theme? What's the unifying theme, and how does it relate to what we've been talking about today?
Oh, goodness. All right. Well, and speaking of try not to add more books to my shelf, which is an active goal that, you know, sometimes I win, sometimes I lose.
You win either way. I mean, you either read books or you get more books. That's a win-win.
So one night I was staring at my shelves, as I do, and I realized, wow, I have a lot of books on here that I need to read. I gotta stop spending. And also I do have a great love, dare I say it, obsession with Interview with the Vampire.
Yes.
Which is one of actually Anne Rice was one of the authors. It's Anne Rice and Amy Tan that really got me into reading.
Mm.
My
Cool.
love of reading, like I always loved reading, but like next level intense love of reading was Anne Rice. And so there's been an adaptation of the books, and I think that the adaptation is so wildly good, and the show isn't watched enough, probably because it's on AMC network. But because I have a love for how the show has handled character arc, the interpretation, when I say adaptation, I mean like even the changes are like everything is so like thoughtfully done.
Yeah.
And the creator themselves has such a wild fangirl heart for Anne Rice, so it's in good hands.
Yeah.
That I wanted to do a couple of things. I wanted to celebrate the adaptation, the characters that I'm seeing on come to life. This feels like crazy. My young self would have just passed out. But also include the love of literature. So it's kind of like feeding itself because it's an adaptation of books, but also we're actively reading. So I'm also promoting literature and reading books from one shelf. So I started to put together a list, and I thought I'm going to do this in a year. But then I realized for my own mental health, I'm going to have a 1 month break in between readathon. So I've broken up by characters. So there's 4 characters a year. Each character I'm tackling for 2 months because I'm reading about like 8 to 6 books for each character. So we're snooping onto the shelves of the characters of Interview the Vampire, and I'm creating prompts based on the character arc. So something for Claudia is the character who's like a vampire. So for her, one of the prompts is Claudia is a writer. So read a play or a journal. So it could be fictional or nonfiction, right? And so I'm hoping that people turn to their shelves if they don't want to, or they could read the exact same book that I'm reading. So there's like a list of prompts, and then I also say exactly which books I'm reading, and they're all from my shelves. And because they're from my shelves, typically I do read books that have to do with social injustices anyways. So that kind of gets embedded in. And I also think that's kind of a great way to kind of do the whole like sugar makes the medicine go down type thing. And so typically every Wednesday, except for Claudia, it's been there's too many things going on. Every Wednesday I'll put out a book review of the book I've read. And so like the first portion of my review truly is that just like a review of the book. And just so in case anyone just wants to watch that portion. But at the end, I'm asking myself like a standard of like 3 questions, which is one is, why is this book on this character's shelf? What book would I recommend the character instead of this for this particular prompt or just for that character? And lastly, my brain just went blank. What was the one? Oh, how does this book recontextualize a character for me if that happens? So there are certain books, like let's say Louis, who I covered for January and February. I read a book about James Baldwin, and something that James Baldwin happened to say in the book that I read, which my brain is mush, I can't think right now. I think he used in terms of like oppression, he symbolically used being treated like or seen as like the devil. He said something like that, something so specific that hit for me, because the character Louis has been adapted for like a particular time period, and he's played by Jacob Anderson. So there's definitely like racial dynamics and injustices that are discussed on the show. And so I find it very interesting that James Baldwin uses the word devil, and the character himself now sees himself like, oh, I felt like he's saying society sees me as a devil, and now I am one. Now I am this thing.
Yeah.
Because the character on the show really grapples with a lot, just like racial injustices, but also there's parts of himself that he's not willing to accept, on top of the fact of being a vampire. So here's something else, another way he doesn't feel like he wants to accept himself.
Yeah.
And I feel like, oh, okay, I think actually James Baldwin is putting something into context for me for this character with specifically use of the word of the devil.
Yeah.
And then later on, I found out from an interview from the actor playing the character that there's a certain time when the character's in Paris. And so he for himself, the work for himself, it's not on the show, it's not canon, but for himself, he felt like, well, there's like a year he would have actually been able to come across James Baldwin. And so
the character
in real, yeah, the character.
Okay.
He feels like for himself, well, he was in Paris at this time. And so James Baldwin would have been there and during that a particular the movements that were going on.
Yeah.
And so actually an article just came out recently and I was like, because I read James Baldwin, and he happened to say that in the present day, because this character is also trying to tell a tale of his past, but he's also putting on a persona, because it's about the perception of how he wants the story to be perceived and how he wants to be perceived now. And so the author says that he thinks his character in modern times, because you see how his voice and his accent sounds different. So he has a New Orleans accent, a very thick New Orleans accent in the past, but in the present day, he has like a specific accent, and he thinks that his character would have kind of like stolen some of the elements of how James Baldwin speaks.
Huh.
And I thought that was so fascinating. That's just something for us fans to know, not really like the show's not putting in, they're not showing us James Baldwin, but we know from the actor that this is informing how he portrays a character in the work. And I was like, wow! I was like so excited.
That's amazing. I don't watch all the readathon videos because I'm not participating with all the prompts, but like, did you put that in a video?
I ended up sharing the article like as a post.
Okay. Nice.
I didn't say anything remotely eloquent because I was just losing my mind.
Too excited.
Yeah.
Don't you have a thing where you're gonna be like with Elaine and a few others for Queen of the Dams this weekend?
We're gonna be together this weekend. I forgot. Like I know, but I don't know.
On theme right there. Oh boy.
We're gonna be discussing Queen of the No. What are we discussing? We're gonna be discussing Queen of the Dam, which is like the third book.
Okay.
And Anne Rice's Chronicles. And so yes, Elaine, okay, yeah. I'm so glad we're doing that because I'm slowly rereading them, and so it worked.
Yeah, nice. Dan said, "Book to screen is a passion for me too. It's the ultimate definition of success." Amazing. And then Mad says, "Just wondering if you ever feel isolated in your social justice concerns or pursuits, or are there people around you who tangibly share your goals?" This is a great question. You want to take it first? Do you want me to take a stab at it first?
I at least, you know what? I'm gonna let you answer first.
Okay, so I kind of have a fallback position on this because I think since 2019, so it's like almost 6 years, I've sort of gone into an abeyance of some sort of like not in the full-time employed world, not really I'm in a lot of like different things at once and nowhere all the way, you know? So I have very divided attention. and it's been very hazy. And that is the time where I've been on Booktube. And so the Booktube personality and the network that I've cultivated and all these lovely people that I've met and become friends with is an online network. And then last year, 5 years in, when the election happened, I was like, I should probably not just be online with folks. I should probably still have a network of people in real life. Because I've watched Sandra Bullock in The Net, and I know what happens if you have no friends in real life. And because we're going to have this apocalypse coming, like, I really feel the need. But it has been so hard to retrain myself to be comfortable with people in real life. Like, I used to not be aware of this. I had the luxury of not being conscious of this all the time. But now, after 5 years of out of practice, I'm just like, how do I start a conversation? Is it okay to approach that person? What do I say? Am I safe in this space? Like, it's so weird. So I have an online network, and I have a very tentative trying to make it flourish in tangible real life people network that I'm trying, but it's very much slower as a 44-year-old trying to cultivate that. So there you go. There's my way more than you asked for answer. How about you, Leslie?
I do feel isolated at times, but specifically to myself, I think some of that is just my fault for not doing enough like outreach. Again, I put myself in a position where I feel like I'm always on like the productive rat
Hamster wheel.
There you go. One of those rat wheel, hamster wheel, the wheel. So some of that is me. I do feel like not even on purpose. I have found connections again through YouTube. Just like talking to you feels like an anchor to my sanity.
Same. I know.
So I think those ways, even if it's like, I guess generally speaking, but like I know you care so much about like climate change. So even if it's not necessarily like the same topics, I feel like there's always like a connection. There's empathy, and so yeah, I think the online community has been very much like a self for me. Additionally, something that I still haven't done that I've been trying to do since last year that connects to Lynn's question is I want to interview people in my community. I'm still trying to get there. I already have someone that's willing to have me talk to them. And so since I also have like a little bit of like social anxiety and books are kind of also my anchor, I just want to have conversations with people in my community because of like how many small businesses have just come and gone. And it feels like that's also part of losing connection ever since the pandemic. It's just like hurt people so much financially, and economy is bad for everyone. So then it makes it harder for small businesses to stay open. But on top of that, that made me realize how much I lean on or need just a small banter of their spaces, their places, seeing familiar faces. And yeah, it might be like small talk, but it's like people you genuinely care about. And there's, I don't know, there's got to be a word for it, like those kind of friendships in a way, right? Your people in your neighborhood, your community. And yeah, so I think I want to interview some people on my channel for that. And those are other ways of connecting that I never thought of as social justice, but I think that's also in the same realm. I just, again, it's kind of breaking away from the ideal of what I think activism is.
Yes.
Versus what I could actually do, you know? Yeah. And that's kind of like something that I need to wrap my head around to also to be kinder to myself in order to do more, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Because a small effort, like writing a thank you note or stopping by and interviewing someone featuring them on your channel, even though we're small channels. Like
Yeah.
the care that comes with those things and the attention and the indication that you think that person is important is what I think we need right now, just like strengthening those bonds of small communities. Because yeah, I'm never gonna be like a famous person getting like a Nike shoe deal to produce shoes up here in Portland. It's like, so the ideal, like the platonic capitalist ideal of like the
Yeah.
success, it's not gonna be me. And so it's really hard to retrain my brain to be like, okay, what is success for me? Now feel successful. Feel successful.
Yeah. Or it kind of reminds me of that moment in Wayne's World. If you remember, this is my old lady reference. Did you see Wayne's World?
A long time ago, and I probably didn't like it. Go ahead though, I might get it.
Because he has like all these sponsors on. So it was like from one scene to another, he has a hat, he has a drink, he has all these things just like in one particular scene. Because but it's like a meta thing about making all the money off of like the product, right?
Yeah.
That I found kind of interesting. Anyways.
Yeah.
Old lady reference.
Well, I mean, I referenced the net. I don't know which one's earlier. That was 1995. When's Wayne's World? 94? It's neck and necklace. Yeah. Screenwriting,
Yeah.
Queen of the Damned. What is it with Interview with the Vampire? Dang. Diane says, I always looked at it as if it was just a trend. I respect Anne Rice as much as I respect Stephen King. If I have cheap voice in my opinion online, I'll do it. Cheap voice? And I'm not sure I understand that second part, but yeah. Yeah, well, there's a live show on Elaine's channel about Queen of the Damned. So in the vein of Interview with the Vampire discussions, if you're interested, head over there, I think on Saturday. 1992, you win the prize.
Older reference.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
I'm gonna look at a clip and I'll send it to your DM.
Okay. All right. Well, we'll tolerate that. I think the only one that I would be upset about seeing again is Pauly Shore. I think he's aged better, but back in the 90s, he was like not anyone I wanted to see the face of. But I think he's aged better. Yes. So any concluding thoughts? I'm just going to say for anyone curious about Agitation August, tomorrow's speaker is Jenna Blum from A Mighty Blaze. She'll be on at 3 p.m. Pacific, 6 p.m. Eastern. We're going to talk about On Tyranny by Timothy Snyder, who is one of the activists who is trying to resist the Trump administration and in so doing has fled the country because he felt he would be targeted. So the way Jenna framed it was, she said, it's going to be an anti-tyranny booster shot. So we're going to talk about some of his 20 lessons to combat tyranny tomorrow night. So stay tuned for that. Sorry. Not my thing. Not my thing. But yeah. So Leslie, any final concluding words about agitation or energies?
Yeah.
You're focusing.
You know how I talk in a circle. I've decided that being the person that feels like I pile on too much on myself, next year, I'm going to have a buddy read series quarterly. I'm probably going to pester you at some time to join me. And it's because we're having this conversation today. Thiong'o has like 4 memoirs that came out in different parts of his life. And so I'm buddy reading with different people in the bookish community just to like celebrate his like activism and life and to learn about him and just kind of,
yeah.
I don't know what it is about the algorithm, but it's hard to find other booktubers like talking about him. There are some, especially since he passed away recently. So I just want to celebrate him some way next year. So it's going to be like a quarterly thing, like one book. So where was I going with this? Oh yeah. Lasting thoughts.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also in part with that, just being somehow kinder to myself and for others to be kinder to themselves. And also that it's okay to take the baby steps because it's a step.
Yes.
And so I'm trying to break away from the ideal of feeling the pressure of the mountain, pushing the mountain when I can't.
Yeah.
And just be like, all right, I could take this baby step. That's all I'm capable of. I'm only one person. And so if we all hopefully get to that mindset, then we can move a pebble.
Hey, if you need someone to hold a boom when you go interview your local business, I will be there. Give me a couple weeks. I will be there.
You'll drive down here.
There you go. There you go. I'll just put my way down. Bring Bean with me.
Oh my gosh, yes, Bean. If you come here without Bean, I'm like, go back.
Oh, I wouldn't bring him to where your cats are. That would be a recipe. No. But yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for all the viewers who came by, and for anyone here on the replay. Feel free to answer the poll question. Poll question was pinned at the top. I already forgot what it was. I showed it at some point. Where do people learn their critical reading skills? So we'll ponder that. We'll see if we get any answers down in the comments. Until next time, thank you so much, Leslie, for being here and discussing all these really neighboring details. And thank you for everyone out there helping us keep critical reading be a thing instead of an artifact.
Yeah, no, thank you. It's always a joy to spend time with you.
Yeah, same. So take care, everyone. Happy reading, and see you next time.
Bye.